know that when you open the Bible to almost the midway, you find the book of Psalms. Some of those days when you just let it fall open in the middle, because you've been reading it a lot, it'll open up to a psalm. Now, if you're a techie, you don't know that. But as I look around this room, most of us started reading the Bible from the book. Now, trust me, I like my Bible on my phone, but every once in a while, I need to go mark up the book because I want to remember what the Lord has spoken to me. And so now, in the New Living Translation, it says, how delightful and how fitting it is to praise the Lord. I listened to the testimonies that went forth this morning, and yes, I'm praising God because my husband didn't hit anything. But I listened to my brother back there as he gave his testimony about how every day could be a struggle, but God. And there are other testimonies in this room. I listened to Neslin. But God. And I know that there are other miraculous stories in this building this very day of people who have been healed, who know folk who've been healed, who walking in their healing, but God. How good it is to sing praises to our God. So now, if you looked in the bulletin, it said something about Sankofa and the old landmark. What in the world does Sankofa, a landmark, and the book of Psalms have to do with one another? I'm so glad you asked that question. Now, you heard about Sankofa. If you never heard it before, I hope we taught you something new today. But many of us remember a song called Let Us All Go Back to the Old Landmark. Aretha Franklin made it real popular. How many of you never heard the song before? Be honest. Come on, don't just sit there. If you never heard it, okay, I'm gonna hit it a little bit. Just work with me. Doc, you don't have to play. Let us all back to the old landmark. Let us all back to the old landmark. Let us all go back to the old landmark, and we'll stay in the service of the Lord. Okay, that's old. That's old school. You young folk don't know nothing about that old school kind of singing. But there was a reason for that song. Landmark. Who knows what a landmark is? You know, good. What's a landmark? Somebody, I like you all talk back to me. What's a landmark? A point of reference. Okay, I like that. Somebody said this is a landmark. New Mount Zion is a landmark. A starting point. Anything else? An identifier. Landmarks. Okay. Now, sometimes when you're given directions, you say, go down to the corner, look for the green building, and make a left turn. That would be a landmark, right? Well, they weren't singing about that kind of landmark. Landmarks are also events that take place in the life of a person or a community. And landmarks like that change the direction of your life. Okay? When you got married, if you married, that changed the direction of your life. Because you no longer lived your life by yourself, you now had to share it with somebody. Well, some of those didn't work quite well, and then you had to get a divorce. But it's a landmark. And you again had to change the direction of your life. How about having children? Does that change anything? Ooh, a whole lot of folks said, oh yeah, getting a new job, losing a job, moving to a new place. Everybody in here has had a landmark moment. When you think back on your life, you've had something that has happened and you sort of had to shift. Well, that was the kind of landmark they were talking about in the song. But they asked to go back to the old landmark. Now, what could they have been referring to? We are celebrating Black History, African American History Month. And we tend to put all of our history packed into 28 or 29 days, depending upon whether it's a leap year, and we try to pack it in. Well, we have too much history to pack into 29 or 28 days. What the folk were singing about was going back to understand what our ancestors did and how they got over. Now, the definition of Sankofa was to do what? Look back, go get it, and that it is all of those things that our ancestors did before us that allow us to stand in this place today. Reverend Davis already said it was prayer that got our folk through. They went into places when the slaveholders didn't want them to have their own church service, and they found a secret place where they could pray to God about all the trials and tribulations that they were going through. And it is obvious that they made it through because we're here today, going back to remember what our ancestors did. Now, what I'm finding is when I talk to young people, they have no real understanding of our history. That's not their fault. The fact that they don't know rests on us. So I'm asking you today to go back, and I'm looking around the room. Most of you are my age. The young folk in here can't go back. They can't go back as far as we can. But it's our job to make sure that the history stays in front of them, so that when they are our age, they will understand how they made it through. So now, as we go back, there are some things about the Black church that we must look back at, hold on to, bring it forward, bring it with us. So I had some personal Sankofa moments while I was doing this. Because you know, those sing, that's what kept coming to me. I gotta sing. Well, I've been singing all my life. And I had to sit back and I thought back to the time when I was about your grandchildren's age, sitting in the church house while the senior choir sang. Y'all remember that? They pulled out what we call those old war horse songs, those anthems, them heavy duty babies. The ones where you had to put the music in front of you and read the line, because if you didn't read it, you were lost. They did songs like, let's see. Y'all remember some of them songs? Songs like Let Mount Zion Rejoice. Y'all remember those? Let Mount Zion rejoice. Let Mount Zion rejoice. Let Mount Zion rejoice. Let the daughters of Judah be glad. Psalms. That was from the book of Psalms. They did stuff like, the Lord is my light and my salvation. Y'all don't know them songs. You don't know anything about those, do you? Talk to me. But you know what those songs did when we heard them? They got down into our spirits. They were the things that we heard as we were coming up. You know, we thought we wanted to be modern. We didn't want to sing that stuff. You know, My choir director said, you're going to sing this, and then I'll let you sing the modern stuff. But there was a purpose for that. It went deep down. And when troubles hit, guess what songs we went back to? We went back to those songs that were deeply embedded into our hearts and our spirits because they gave us the tools that we needed to function in the world. Well, I also remember being that age and my parents, well, I can remember seeing Sister So-and-so sing the song, but I sure can't remember the song. But those songs are a part of our history that we should try to hold on to. Somebody line out a song for me. The Lord. In your life, somewhere deep down in your very being, you heard the Lord saying to you, but I will I will hear you. I hear you. And every groan you have, I will pity it, meaning I just won't feel sorry for you, but I'm going to do something about it. Lost art, Sankofa, go back. That's an old landmark, going back to get what we are forgetting as a people. Now, there's something that I have been paying attention to when I turn on the radio and I decide I want to listen to some gospel music because I just want to be encouraged. I don't mean no harm, y'all, but some of these songs don't leave me with encouragement. I won't name any because that's not fair, because it may encourage someone else. It just doesn't encourage me. And so, you know, I love Kirk Franklin, but when things get difficult, I can't sing Stomp. I need to sing The Angels Keep Watching Over Me. Or I need to sing I Know the Lord Has Laid His Hands on Me. Or I need to sing, my God is so high you can't get over him. Especially in times like today, when we have folk who think God isn't paying attention to them, and they can do what they want, say what they want, act the way they want, be as mean and evil as they want, and get away with it. But my understanding that came from my ancestors, when the slaveholder was acting the same way and telling us that we were 3/5 of a human being and treating us as though we were animals, that the God that those slaveholders supposedly told folk they believed in, the slave understood, but my God is so high, you can't get over him. There's a door you got to go through just like I do. And if you don't have this quite right, you ain't getting in. They also sang things like, God is a God. God don't ever change. Ever. Now, you need to know something about the song that the slaves created. We call them spirituals. And of course, they came out of the difficulties that our people lived through. But a lot of those spirituals were based on the book of Psalms. Now, the book of Psalms was written by who? You got it. Somebody said David, then somebody said, no, David mostly, and that's the fact. There are 150 Psalms written by a number of writers: Moses, Solomon, David, Asaph, the sons of Korah. Now, this particular psalm was written by, Psalm 147, was written by basically the minister of music in the tabernacle. It was written by a musician. The book of Psalms is a song book. They sang. So when the people went to the temple, the ancient Hebrews went to the temple, they had services sort of like we do. And they would sing. That's why the psalm writer says how good it is to sing praises to our God. And then he went on to explain why it was good. In this one, he said, because the Lord is going to rebuild Jerusalem. That means what was torn down, God's going to build it back up. It means that the Lord will bring the exiles back. You know, they were not at home. You do understand that. They weren't sitting in Israel writing these poems and these songs. They were in captivity. And they wanted to go home. But they also knew that God would take them eventually back home. So they sang about home. Well, our forefathers did the same thing. Though we did not get back home, meaning back to Africa, we found a home here where they brought us because we had to. So we've made home. And we would sing things like, Take My Mother Home. Songs you all don't know much about. And then the songwriter writes, He heals the brokenhearted. Now, you can't be more brokenhearted than being called a slave and being told that you can't do anything, and your daughters and your sons are being snatched away and stolen from you, and the slaveholder is using you as a female any old way he wants to. That was an early Me Too moment, y'all. We've been saying Me Too a whole lot longer than this particular movement, but that was an early Me Too moment. But the slaveholder was not the final word. God was. You know they sang about go down Moses. Way down in Egypt land, tell old Pharaoh to let my people go. Well, the slaves understood that a Moses was coming. What they call Harriet Tubman. The Moses of our people, because she liberated, she freed, she allowed people to live in freedom. And after the Civil War was over, freedom came. Slaves had been calling for that for a long time. But now, if we forget those songs, if we don't take the Sankofa moment to go back and sing them again, teach them to our children. Remember, when you don't know your history, you are bound to do what? Repeat it. Now, it's not quiet. It's out in the open. There is a faction in this nation today who will say publicly that maybe slavery should be put back in place. If somebody doesn't stand up, if somebody doesn't start praying, if somebody doesn't get together, if we are not careful, this faction can have their way. We must remember what our ancestors went through so that we would not be enslaved like they were. we can't allow ourselves to go back. We have to have a Sankofa moment where we bring forward the strength and the resiliency and the fortitude that they had to make sure that their children, their grandchildren, and great-grandchildren lived free. So then there's a question. What are we going to do about that? That's another sermon. I'm not going to go there. So now, those songs, those songs, they're so deep down inside of me and who I am. And so I went to YouTube. YouTube has everything you want to find. And when I should have been writing, instead I was listening to songs and being carried back to places and spaces that help to shape and form who I am. Those old songs, and I could see the faces of the people that went before me. And I bet you all can do that too when you start thinking about the folk who were in your life when you were little and what they did, and you can think about that. And then it gives you pleasure, and it also gives you encouragement and pushes you forward to do more things. Now, y'all started off today, you just started off with the Psalms today. And understand that for me that was important because I had to understand that when the Hebrew people were writing the Psalms, they didn't write them so somebody could sit down, put them all together and say, great, we got a songbook. That wasn't the purpose. The purpose was for people to write about their relationship with God. Now, I have always heard people say, and don't misunderstand or misquote me, that every word in the Bible is the word of God. It got quiet. Why did it get quiet? Well, let me get you talking and thinking. The book of Psalms is not, repeat, not a set of instructions given by God to people to tell us what to do. So what is it then? But what is it if that's not what it is? It is a compilation of poetry and songs over a long period of people writing about who their God is. When David said, the Lord is my shepherd, it came out of his life. God didn't tell him to write that. When the psalmist said, the Lord hides me under his wings, that was because he shall hide me. And he would wait on the Lord. Every one of the Psalms is a human being's expression of what they were feeling at the time that they wrote the psalm. Did you know there were Psalms where the writer is so angry with God? He basically says, God, where are you? You're not listening. You're not hearing a word I'm saying. You're not fixing this mess. You're not doing anything. God, where are you? But some of us have been taught that we cannot question God. Guess what? Yes, you can. You can't get an answer if you don't ask a question. You won't know what to do if you don't ask God. And then another psalmist was having an issue with somebody, a big issue with somebody. They were trying to get him. And you know what that psalmist said? Lord, take him out of here. Kill him. We want to think it's all sweet. No, it's not sweet. These people talked about every emotion that they had. They talked about depression. They talked about being talked about. They talked about being oppressed. They talked about everything that the human condition can find. If you don't want to read any other book in the Bible, read Psalms. Start there. And you will be encouraged. And then there's a psalmist that says, and Psalm 66 is one of my favorite, come and see what the Lord has done for me. It's personal, y'all. Psalms is a personal book. And so that's how I make the connection between Sankofa, Landmark, and the book of Psalms. They're all tied together. Remember that when the Africans were brought to this land in the 1600s, some of you may not know this, but many of them came already knowing who God was, and they may even have already been Christians. Huh? How you do that? You can't be a Christian till the white folks go to Africa and evangelize us. Wrong. Now let me help you with this. The early church began in where? Say it louder. You going, what? Africa? Huh? Yes, the early church began in Africa, in the Middle East. Not up, you need a map, but not up in Europe. It wasn't there yet. Remember, the Romans were crucifying folk like Jesus. The Romans were also taking the Christians and trying to wipe them all out. And now I'm going to help you. The Romans / white folk, Christians / brown black folk in North Africa. You can go home and do your history. The early church fathers, the people who started the doctrine of the church, came from North Africa. And it was those people who taught and brought Christianity to the Romans, European / white people. Do you remember the book, the story in the Bible where Philip, Jesus' disciple, met an East.
My mouth I speak to you, with my heart I sing to you, with my soul I'll give to you all of the praise. I say thank you for everything, for all the things you've done, for the battles you fought for me, for the victories won. With my mouth, with my heart, with my soul, I'll give you all the praise. I want to say thank you, yeah, for all the things you've done, for the battles you fought, for the victories you won. Ooh, I want to say
thank you, Lord.
I give you praise.
Praise to you,
I lift my hands
to you, Lord.
Thank you, Lord.
Thank you, Lord.
Thank you, Lord.
Thank you, Lord.
I want to say yes, I do,
Thank you,
yeah.
Lord.
I